Harihi Om. Om Gajananam Mahakayam Vicknerajam Vinayakam Vishvesham Vishvashaksham Ganeshayam Namo Namaha. Om Gajananam Bhudaganadi Sevidham Kavitta Jambho Balasara Vakshitham Umasudam Sokha Vinashakaranam Namami Vickneswara Pada Pankajam. Om Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalar Spatikatruthim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrivam Upasmahe Yasyat Virada Vakradhyaya Parishatya Parashatham Vignam Nignam Tisatatam Vishwashremam Tamashraye. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Gurave Sarvalokanam, Visaje Bhavaruginaha, Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam, Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Sadguru Jaranavindabhyam Namo Namaha. Om Sahanao Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Partaya Pratibodhidham Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitham Purana Munina Madhya Mahabharate Advaita Amrita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambhatvam Anushodadami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshinim. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Krishna Yarpanamastu. Asti Nyada Sharanam. Sai Ram, and welcome back to the key lessons that we can learn from the great epic, from the great Ithihasa, Mahabharata, right? So I think I explained before, the word Ithihasa means Ithihasam. Ithihasam, that means this is how it happened then. So the very labeling of these epics as Ithihasas tells you that they are not mere fabrications of a, traveling mind, but they are actually incantations of incidents that have actually taken place in history, right? And contributing factors to the growth of Hinduism. So today we move on to 2 characters. And before that, and I just apologize for last week, I had a bit of a throat issue. So that's gone. Thankfully, we are back. So this is the penultimate week. Today I'm going to be looking at Dhritarashtra and Arjuna, right? And next week, I'll be finishing off with Shakuni and Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandavas. And I'll be giving you some closing remarks, bit of a consolidation, if you like, and then I'm going to open it up to question and answer series. And that will be our last series as far as this Mahabharata is concerned, right? As to whether we do something in future, that remains to be seen. All I will say is let his will prevail. Okay. So Dhritarashtra, as you know, the main administrative body in India is called Rashtra Bhavan. Okay, Rashtra. Where the political hub is. So what does Dhritarashtra mean? Dhritarashtra, Dhritarashtra. Rashtra means people. Dhrita comes from the root word drishti, which means one who looks after the people. So in this sense, right, Dhritarashtra, although that was his name, right? I mean, take out the equation that he was blind, right? Dhritarashtra means one who is able to govern well. So if you like a good king, right? In that sense, that's what Dhritarashtra means. Of course, if you go back to history, King Shantanu, as a result of having two sons, one was Pandu, the other was, of course, Dhritarashtra, both born to different mothers. And of course, we had Bhishmacharya, who was the firstborn King Shantanu. But because he took his oath of brahmacharya, he would not be able to ascend the throne. So Dhritarashtra was born of, his mother was Ambika. His father was Vichitravirya. So of course, after he left, Pandu was appointed the king or the ruler of Hastinapur, only because Dhritarashtra was born blind, right? And of course, Vichitravirya died in, strange circumstances, most of which related to, ill health. And so when he passed on, there was a question of who is going to take over the throne. It was either Pandu or Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra was firstborn, right? And Pandu was secondborn. So technically, he should become the king because the eldest son takes over the throne. But because he was born blind, the Rajaniti or the Rajatantra says that a king cannot be blind. He has to have vision. He has to see. And therefore, when it came to the nomination process, the other brother, the third brother, Vidura, the most balanced one between the three, and the most sattvic. So if you take the three brothers, right, if you connect them with the gunas, the three gunas, the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic, who do you think is, of course, as I said, Vidura is the most balanced, so definitely he is sattvic. Between Pandu and Dhritarashtra, who do you think is rajasic and who do you think is tamasic? Obviously, Pandu was tamasic and Dhritarashtra was rajasic. Okay. So after the incident, when Pandu was ruling, the story was he shot an arrow at a deer, and then the deer happened to be Rishi Kindama. And of course, there was a curse. And after some time, Pandu could not rule his kingdom in a manner which befitted, a good king. Therefore, he retreated to the forest and he made Dhritarashtra step in as a deputy. As a deputy, because the king is still there, alive, so no one can take his place. And it was not a form of abdication, so there was no issue about that. So Pandu says, I'm going to the forest for a while to do some tapas, to ask for forgiveness for my sins. Please step in and rule in my absence. But of course, Pandu never came back. He died in the forest. Anyway, the point is, now there's a question of, who is going to become the king. Now, just because you're a deputy or you're acting in the position, it doesn't mean by default or by automation you get that position, right? There's still a process. Like, if you talk about politics, there's always an election. It doesn't mean that, next in line takes over the position. So there was a succession crisis. And of course, Dhritarashtra, with the support of the others, ascended the throne, and he said, after me, it would be Duryodhana. Then the problem came because Pandu's son Yudhishthira was the firstborn, and he was born before Duryodhana, right? And I said this when I was talking about Duryodhana. And next week, I'll be talking the last two characters, Shakuni and Yudhishthira. So Shakuni and Yudhishthira. So if you look at two sides of the coin, right? One is Adharma, one is Dharma, like that. And then we'll finish next week. So the succession crisis began. Now, of course, on the question of merit, Yudhishthira was next in line. But did he get that spot? Answer is no. Why? Because Dhritarashtra favored his own eldest firstborn, who's Duryodhana, right? Despite knowing Duryodhana's faults, Duryodhana's character, Duryodhana's mindset, Dhritarashtra still inclined towards putting Duryodhana there. Here is where we need to stop and think about two things. Now, this is the key lessons, right? One is attachment, right? And the other is favoritism. Not giving someone on the basis of merit, but giving someone because there is something that you may gain out of it, or because of favoritism, partiality. So whether it is dharmic to do that or not. As a king, you have to uphold dharma, even though it may be against your own kith and kin. A solid example, or super example of that is Rama. Rama was perfect in every role he played. As a son to the father, dharma, full 100%. As a shishya to Vishwamitra, to Vashishta, 100%, right? As a brother to his brothers, 100% dharma. As a son to his mother, 3 mothers, 100%. Even he was banished to the forest, right? Vanavasa for 14 years. He still went to Kaikeyi, fell at her feet, took her blessings and went. That is Rajaniti. That is dharma. So he is a Purushotta Dharman, Purushottama Dharman. That means there is no one that can be given that, throne of being the most dharmic. He was the best. He was the best in every role he played, including being a husband, including being the king. So when it came to him acting as the king, who became in the forefront of his vision of his, ruling? The people. And this is where you must understand that when you actually execute your role, dharma must dictate when you do, what you do, for who you do, and why you do it. It cannot be, oh, Sita is my wife, so I cannot fault her, I cannot find fault with her. Because there was, a query raised, he acted as a king should. Okay, so sometimes we misunderstand things or we misinterpret things because we don't put things in the right context. So same here with Dhritarashtra, right? Whatever happened, he said, no, Duryodhana, 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 right? And of course, Dhritarashtra was blind, so he couldn't see what was happening. And, he often heard news. What is happening in his kingdom, because there were other people who were, feeding him with information. Of course, Vidura, the minister, was there. Bhishma was there, Drona was there, and of course, all the courtiers were there. So they were all giving him information. But the point is, even when he knew, not by sight, but by sound, that Duryodhana was up to no good, did he act properly? Did he act righteously? And the quick answer is no, right? Because he came to know of the, if I say Lakshagraha incident, that means, where they built that candle palace and then it all burned down. He didn't call Duryodhana and said, don't do this, don't do that. He just let it be, And of course, his wife's brother, Gandhari, Dhritarashtra's wife is Gandhari, who also blinded herself, right? In order to experience the same impact that a husband experiences. So that sacrifice also came with some Siddhic powers. That is why in the Hindu Dharma, it is said sometimes you must close your eyes in meditation. Sometimes you must do this Mauna Vrit. That means you must not say anything. So all this gives you Siddhic powers, right? Because every day we talk, every day we see all kinds of things. So one day we should just close our eyes to all these things and be deep in meditation. Or if you can't do that, one whole day don't speak. Not a single word. And then you see how your Siddhic power grows, right? Because even in darkness, you can see a lot of things. You can see a lot of things, right? And that, you must develop the Siddhic powers and come to that level where you can just command and you will be able to see things. So Shakuni was there living with his sister and brother-in-law Dhritarashtra. And of course, he became very close to Duryodhana and Dushasana, right? And of course, the Pandava, the Kaurava brothers. And of course, he hated the Pandavas. Now, I want you to think about this, right? This is highly political. In order to get favors from A, you must know whose A's friends are and who are A's enemies. So if you want A to be close to you and you want to be close to A, you have to be close to A's friends and you have to hate A's enemies, even though they have done anything to you personally, right? There is nothing in the entire Mahabharata, in any of the commentaries, or at least in the many versions or variations that I have read, that said Shakuni had a real problem with the Pandavas. No, never, right? But Shakuni wanted to use the gullibility and the vulnerability of Duryodhana in order to achieve his own agenda, right? So he used him. So he got close to him. So Duryodhana's friends became his friends and Duryodhana's enemies became his foes, right? Very, very simple. He also, from time to time, used to inform Dhritarashtra. Inform and influence, the two I's, inform and influence, right? And he managed to successfully make sure that Dhritarashtra was completely, he was blind anyway, so he couldn't see anything that Duryodhana was doing, but he was also made to be dumbed, right? Where he could have spoken out, he didn't speak out at all at any point in time, right? Even when, Draupadi was being disrobed, he didn't say anything. Not that he could see, but he could understand, he could hear what people were saying and what people were talking in the court at that time of disrobing. He didn't say anything at all. Now, here is where I want you to stop and think. If you see something wrong, if you see something, forget about whether it's unlawful or illegal, something that is immoral being done, an untruth being facilitated, and if you remain silent, do you incur, do you attract any form of adharma? The very simple answer is yes. Yes, because dharma is where your thoughts are righteous, your words are righteous, and your conduct is righteous. And when these three forms of righteousness become one, it is called Traikarana Suddhi, and that must produce the intended result. Then you will get Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Okay. Otherwise, you cannot be thinking bad, saying something neutral, but doing something bad. They have to be all positive, positive, positive. Then you've acted with dharma. Otherwise, it is adharma and you will get the sin. A sin for thinking adharmically, a sin for speaking adharmically, and indeed a sin for doing things adharmically. There is no other way. This is the dharma of dharma, right? So even when Krishna came, after the talk of war and all came, he went to see Dhritarashtra, he went to see Duryodhana. But I'm sure you've seen the movie and there's a part where Duryodhana arrests him and all of that, right? So the end of the story is that mission failed. Even Krishna, who went as an emissary, was not able to convince Duryodhana, was not able to convince Dhritarashtra, because behind Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana was Shakuni. And next week, I'll give you more details about Shakuni. Also a great character, right? Again, what he says and what he thinks and what he does are three different things. So there is no, what we call, um, there is no consistency between his thoughts, his words, and his actions. But dharmic consistency. There's always adharmic consistency. Now, so the war was declared. And Dhritarashtra was, neither here nor there, because everybody else could see what was going to happen except him. So Vyasa came and he said, look, by the Siddhic powers in me, I can grant you divine vision from the beginning until the end of the war, right? But Dhritarashtra said he doesn't want to see all the bad things that come out of the war. He didn't want to see any of his child getting hurt or killed, right? So he said, no, I don't want it. But what you can do is give it to Sanjaya, my charioteer. And that's why Sanjaya was given that vision, which started on the first day of the war and ended on the 18th day. So the only time when Dhritarashtra reputedly regretted not having that divine vision was when Krishna in the battlefield stopped everything, stopped time. That's why Krishna is Kala Chakran. So he can stop time and make time work at will. So when he stopped that to show Arjuna who he was, this is during the Gita Upadesha. Okay. And if you want to know more, then, I would ask you to go and see the Bhagavad Gita videos on the YouTube channel. So when he gave that Vishwarupam to Arjuna, Sanjaya could see that. And Sanjaya was narrating this to Dhritarashtra. And that is the only moment where Dhritarashtra actually regretted not getting the divine vision, because he missed his chance of seeing the divine, And that's when he realized that if Krishna is the charioteer of Arjuna, then, where is the equation? Where is the balance? And then that's when he realized that, hey, even though we have Bhishmacharya, we have Dronacharya, we have Ashwatthama, we have Karna, the only one who was against Karna was Bhishmacharya. Everybody else was putting Karna on a pedestal, right? But he was on a balance of probability. He thought we may still win because Krishna promised not to take up arms. He was only the Parthasarathi. That means the charioteer. So Dhritarashtra took joy in that. Right? And of course, the person he hated most among the Pandavas, I'm talking about Dhritarashtra's hate, among the 5 Pandava brothers was Bhima. Because Bhima was mercilessly slaying all his sons, right? In fact, almost 90% of the Kauravas were destroyed by Bhima. And of course, he also killed, Duryodhana at the end. So Arjuna killed Karna, and Arjuna killed another one or two of them. But mostly, Bhima was the slayer. So he hated Bhima the most. So even after the war, when the Pandavas came back to the palace of Hastinapur to reclaim it, dharmically, having won the Dharma Yuddham. Dharma Yuddham means the war of Dharma, right? War of Dharma because people behaved adharmically, right? So it is a question of individual recognition and individual spiritual awakening, right? That you, at any time, despite what is happening around you, despite who is doing what around you, you have to exercise that dharma of thinking right, speaking right, and doing right. Then you are safe. Because even in the face of adharma, dharma will come and save you. Right? See, Karna was with the bad guys, right? But every time he was saved until the last moment when Krishna himself came and took away his only, kavacha, right? And of course, Indra also came and did that. So left him completely at the mercy of Arjuna. So anyway, so that was when they went to the palace, Hastinapur. See, this is the point where you need to understand, right? Somebody's feeling of total revenge may continue for a while before he finally realizes, or before that person finally recognizes the impact of that revengeful intent and then gives it up. Until you give it up consciously, it will still be playing. So when they came to visit, Dhritarashtra was already intent on killing. Dhritarashtra was a very, very strong person, despite not having sight. Right? He could not wield weapons, but he was a very, very strong man. So what he decided, or before they came, was he built, a statue of Bhima, and he was practicing throwing the knife at this statue of Bhima. And of course, he told them to build the statue in steel. So every day he used to go and, do a body hug like that, so strong. And one day he just broke the steel statue into two. Then he had another one built. So anyway, the statues, they put all the statues out there as a form of welcoming the Pandavas back and all that. So when Bhima was with his four other brothers, and they went to take the Ashirwad from, from Dhritarashtra and Gandhari and Kunti, who were all there, Dhritarashtra said, let me give a hug to each one of you. When it came to Bhima's turn, Krishna signaled that the statue was there to be brought in front. So the statue was in front of Dhritarashtra, and Bhima was standing behind the statue. And Dhritarashtra hugged the statue with so much of might and strength that he broke the statue, right? And then he realized that it was a statue, and he broke down. And that's the time he let go of his revengeful intent. Vengeance will never do you good. It will do you harm in your thoughts. It will do you harm in your words. And the balance of your thoughts and the balance of your words, and certainly in the balance of your actions. That is the time he realized that he was completely defeated. He broke down, he cried, he apologized for his folly, and then he wholeheartedly embraced Bhima and the other Pandavas. And, he was still grief-stricken, a few years later. I think records show that it was about 16 years after the Great War. I mean, they were all there, but, Yudhishthira was ruling and so on and so forth. All of them left. All of them meaning Dhritarashtra left with his wife Gandhari, with his sister-in-law Rajamata Kunti, with his brother Vidura. So this gang, they left Hastinapur for penance in the Himalayas, right? And of course, after some time, they all found their own way and attained moksha. But Dhritarashtra's role as far as being the king, a king is one when he gives an instruction or when he gives a direction, no one can challenge it. That is the power of Raja Dharma, right? But what did he do? He completely kept silent and ensured that Duryodhana's plan, aka Shakuni's plan through Duryodhana, worked effortlessly. Whether it was the Lakshagraha, the palace, and the attempts of Duryodhana to poison Bhima and to do injustice and to harm the Pandavas, everything escaped his ears. Of course, everything will escape his eyes because he's blind, but everything escaped his ears, and he said nothing to Duryodhana, right? Even at the end of the day when Draupadi was being disrobed, he didn't say anything. He only stopped when Gandhari told him, stop this because Draupadi is now taking a vow to curse the entire Kuru dynasty. So stop it. That is the time he spoke, and he said, okay, stop this. But by that time, Krishna had intervened, and the bale of sari was growing and growing and growing. So God actually acts first, but you may not realize it. But at the end of the day, when you assess and analyze and evaluate, you will know this is not a normal doing. So he intervened then, but of course, all the other people who were there, including people like Bhishmacharya, Dronacharya, all the greats, the advisors to the ruling kingdom, everybody was there. The only two people who actually said something right one was Vikarna. Vikarna was one of the Kauravas, and he was not liked by all the Kauravas because he was very balanced and he was sattvic. And he was actually the favorite of Vidura. So you can understand why his thinking, his mindset, he was very well balanced. Only Vidura and Vikarna said something, and they were just, shut down by Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, saying, the king is not saying anything. You have no right to say anything. Of course, the king didn't say anything, right? Dhritarashtra could have spoken out by saying, this is not the right way to do it, right? Because don't forget, he's also got a wife, he's also got a daughter, right? All of that. So you can't, and another fellow who escaped was someone called Yuyutsu. Yuyutsu was also one of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Yuyutsu, what he did was he had defected to the Pandava side, right? At the onset of the war, he said, no, I cannot be here. This is completely adharmic. I'm going to go and fight for them against my brothers because that is the right thing to do. He was the only son of Dhritarashtra who managed to survive the Kurukshetra war because he did the right thing. He did the right thing because his mind was balanced, thinking, right speaking, and right action. This is where, because he embraced Dharma, Dharma embraced him back. Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. When you do Dharma, Dharma will come and protect you, right? Someone rang me some months ago and said, something happened to them. And the whole day they were like disturbed or something like that. And then when they went back in the evening, they found out something had happened. And as a result of which, they realized that nothing happens without the will of God. So basically what happened was he was delayed in the morning. And in the morning, by virtue of his wife and children and all that, he got late, getting ready to go to work. And then he spilled the coffee because it was too hot. He spilled the coffee, then he had to go and change the shirt. Long story short, he could not take his car to work because his car was not starting. Okay, car was fine. And he took a taxi to work, and he went there to work. And of course, the boss said, the project you submitted I'm not happy with it. I'm going to do it again. So whole day, everything went wrong. Then the evening, when he went back, he found that, the car could start and everything was working fine. And one of his friends had come to borrow the car. Of course, the wife let him have the car because it's his good friend and all that. And long story short, the car met with an accident. I mean, the friend survived, but the car was a total write-off. So I told him the fact that you were delayed and all these things happen is to prevent you from, this is the right way to look at it. Whatever you look at it, you look at the justifications before, you never had a problem with the car. The car was just serviced. So there is no reason, mechanical reason to justify why the car would not start. So I told him, this is the divine intervention, right? Because you have done some dharma, that dharma has come to protect you from harm. And this is what they say, whatever is coming for your head goes with your crown, they said. So I told him that, and then he understood that, So sometimes when some things happen and things are not going right, that means there is a reason behind it, right? You have to accept that and move on. No matter how much you deny, no matter how much you fight it, that's that. Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. Now let's look at Dhritarashtra's character, right? Was he a good king in terms of Raja Dharma, Rajanidhi? The answer is no, because he was completely abusing his dominant position. Abuse of dominant position is a breach of trust in the modern day, right? And of course, nepotism. right? You can see that he was completely into nepotism. So it's not a new thing, brothers and sisters. Yeah, nepotism is not a new thing. Favoritism is not a new thing, right? Attachment is not a new thing. Back in Shankara's day itself, he said, बालस्तावत् पीडासक्तः तरुणास्तावत् तरुणीसक्तः वृद्धास्तावत् चिन्तासक्तः परमे ब्रह्मणे कोऽपि न सक्तः. He said there's attachment from the time you're from the time you're born. You're a young boy, you're a young man, you're a married person, and even in your old age you are still attached to all these thoughts. But alas, no one is attached to Parabrahman, right? Parame brahmane kopi na saktaha. Nobody is attached to that one thing that will give you complete freedom from this cycle of birth and death, punarjanmaha. So he was number one, right? Abuse of position, breach of trust, because he's ruling for the country. His primary loyalty is to the people, so breach of trust there. And he was, of course, into nepotism. He wanted his own people up there, mainly his son. Secondly, did he exercise discrimination or viveka? Of course, the answer is no, he didn't. Right? Because of that, certain emotions will arise. For example, a distress. He was always distressed because he was not doing the right thing. If you always do the right thing, distress will never come you. You will de-stress yourself, D-E, not D-I-S-T-R-E-S-S. You will de-stress yourself if you act dharmically, right? A very famous saying, Yatho dharma tato Krishna, tato jayam. Right? So wherever there is dharma, Krishna is present. Wherever there is Krishna, there is only victory. Hence, you can understand why Krishna said, I will never take arms, but I am happy to be your Parthasarati. I will drive your chariot. Or you can have my 16 Akshavinis, 16 million Akshavinis. Duryodhana chose the Akshavini. And Arjuna said, if you are driving the chariot, what do I have to worry about? So sacrifice there. Second thing, apart from distress, is dilemma. You will always be, because Hastinapur was a Dharmashetra. But because he was behaving adharmically, as were his sons, there was always the question of, do I do this? Do I do that? Will this give me pleasure or displeasure? Will this give me peace of mind, or will it put me at, a lot of stress, all that? So, dilemma. And thirdly, when you don't have the right attitude and the right mental set, you will become selfish, self-centered mindset you will get, right? When you go on the basis of whatever I want to receive, I must first give, right? So that classic saying, do unto others as you'd like others to do unto yourself. That must first show itself. Then yes, you will get it. So there are a few lessons to be learned from Dhritarashtra. Number one, build amicable relations. Exercise comity, right? C-O-M-I-T-Y, comity, right? At an individual level and at an organizational level. So everything you have to look at an individual level and an organizational level. At an individual level, build harmony between who? You. Who are you going to build harmony with? Right? You build harmony with your jnana indriyas and your karma indriyas. You build harmony with your manas, right? Your mind, and buddhi, intellect. There must be this amicability between the two. Then only you can tame the fellow called ego or ahamkara, right? And Dhritarashtra, despite being blind, was, completely, full of ego, right? So again, at an organizational level, you need to be fair with everybody. What we say is silo. You cut out the silo. Build, cross-functional ability, cross-functional teams, improve coordination, improve working ethics. Then yes, that's the first lesson. Building amity, building amicable relations, right? The second one is letting go of something that is not going to work out or pan out in your interests. Let go and let God. Finish, right? At an individual level, what I'm saying is don't cling on to your past. The past is history. right? The present is the gift. The future is mystery. So no point you harping on something that is still mysterious, because it will only happen on the day, and that day is tomorrow. And tomorrow you can only live tomorrow. You can't live tomorrow today. And you can't live yesterday today, because yesterday is gone. That's why it's called the present, and hence the word gift. Present have two contextual meanings. One is time, the other is a present, a gift, right? So at an organizational level, this letting go means you become a catalyst leader. If we talk about leadership, a transformational leader, not a transactional leader, right? In leadership, there are two types. One is transactional, doing what needs to be done. And one is transformational, doing it in a way that people will do anything to ensure that that transformation is seen, right? So empowering the people you work with. That's another lesson. Lesson number 3, you have to take a stand sometimes. Sometimes you have to take a stand. And that means doing something that may not favor some of the people who are close to you, close quarters. So you train your buddhi, your intellect. As I said, train it to have power over the mind. Because when you have power over the mind, manas, can control the chitta or the thoughts with the right buddhi mindset, right? And ask there to be a balance between the organic senses and senses of action, the jnana indriyas and the karma indriyas. Then you will start doing only what is dharmically correct, right? So in the same sense, taking a stand and doing what is right, leaders must do that. And Dhritarashtra didn't do that. So a lesson to be learned is taking a stand, doing what is right. For that, you must train your intellect to manage your mind, and your mind to manage the thoughts. And that can only be done when there is a balance between the jnana indriyas and the karma indriyas. So to bring Dhritarashtra to a close, his story, right? If you are learning or reading about Dhritarashtra, remember it is a cautionary tale. It is a cautionary tale reminding us of the importance of, number 1, sacrifice, number 2, forgiveness, number 3, empathy, and number 4, far-reaching consequences of actions done purely on attachment. So detachment. Okay, that's what we should learn from Dhritarashtra. And that is that. Now we come to Arjuna. Arjuna, as you know, was the one of the 5 sons of Pandu, right? And Kunti Devi. So you had Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, and then Nakula and Sahadev. Okay, who was the Ashwini twins. Yudhishthira was born to Dharmaraja. Bhima was born to Vayu. Arjuna was born to Indra, and the Ashwini twins was born to the Ashwini stars. So Arjuna, if of course, there's a period where he grew up all the time exposed to the Pandavas. The Pandavas were exposed to the Kauravas. So the 5 brothers were exposed to the deeds/misdeeds, guidance, everything from Bhismacharya, Dronacharya, Vidura, and all the other teachers who had come from time to time. So they all grew up together, but they grew up because they were in their own little cliques, if you like. The Pandavas kept to themselves, the Kauravas only kept to themselves, right? And of course, Dhritarashtra always gave more favoritism to his own sons than to the sons of his brothers, his own nephews, his own blood, right? As far as Arjuna is concerned, there are 2 periods of exile, right? One was after marriage, one of the marriage to Draupadi, all the 5 brothers. So, they all take 1 year to stay with her, and then she takes a, Agnisuchi, which means she walks into the fire and comes out purified. After she came out of the fire anyway. So she is fire in a sense. And that's one of the reasons why, Gandhari was afraid that if she curses, fire does not destroy with discrimination. Fire destroys indiscriminately. Whatever comes into his fold, the fire's fold, it destroys and brings it to one state of equanimity. Right. Anyway, so that was one of the reasons why Gandhari said stop before it gets, beyond redemption. So they all agreed that when, Draupadi is with one of the brothers, no one else can enter the main quarters where, the brother who's supposed to be with Draupadi stays. One day in Yudhishthira's time with Draupadi, he was, he wanted to show his Gandiva bow to Yudhishthira. And in excitement, he had just walked in and totally forgetting, that nobody can enter the quarters. And as a result, he was banned into the forest, for a short period of time. So that was his first exile. And the second exile is as a result of the game of dice in Duryodhana's court. And then, of course, they went in for, 12 plus 1 in the second term. So in the first term, there are many things that happened to him. But before that, Arjuna is another person who has got many, many terms of reference, right? He's called by many, many different names. And even Krishna himself calls him in different names, right? Krishna has called him Partha. He's called him Gudakesha, right? Gudakesha means one who has conquered sleep, right? For example, in when he's actually talking to Arjuna, he said, Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarvabhudasya Stitaha Aham Adischa Madhyancha Andamevacha. So he said, Arjuna, I may seem as though I'm in sleep, but I'm actually in the state of Nitra Yoga. Means even in the state of sleep, I am sleepless. I am the beginning, I am the middle, and I am the end. Aham Adischa Madhyancha Andamevacha. Right. So Gudakesha was one of his name. Dhananjaya was another name, one who's, Dhana, wealth. Vijaya was another his name. Lots of other names he had. He had Mahabahu, Gandhivadhari, which is, one who is Partha, Kaunteya, son of Kunti, Panduputra, son of Pandu, Pandava, son of Pandu as well, Krishna Sevaka, and Brhanala. Brhanala was when he was, in the kingdom of Vichitra, and then he became a eunuch. So that was his early time. And once, when he was in the first part of his exile, when, he was sent away, that means he was on his own, in exile. I think it was for a period of 2 or 3 years, I'm not sure. But the fact is, in these 2 or 3 years, he did some meditation. He fought some of the demons. And history, some records say he married once. And some records say he married twice. But most importantly, what is important is he married Subhadra, who is the sister of Krishna. Okay, and this happened in Dwaraka. Okay, so he said first he married to somebody called Ulupi, right? She was a Naga princess. Then secondly, he married somebody called Chitrangara, right? And thirdly and the most important thing. So we're not interested in how many times he got married and to whom he got married. The point is he married Krishna's sister, Subhadra, and through them was born the first son, who's Abhimanyu, right? And Abhimanyu, another divine child. And he, when Subhadra was, pregnant with him, she was always in court when, the Pandava brothers were discussing how to, and everything that was spoken, even the strategies, Abhimanyu, when he was born with that knowledge, right? And this is 100% true, right? So I've also experienced that myself, right? So and I'm going to share this with you, although it's quite personal to me. But I want you to know that, when you are carrying a child, when the mother is carrying the child, that is why in the Hindu sampradaya, right, when the wife gets pregnant, the husband normally sends her to the mother's house, because the mother will never wish anything untoward or negative or unpleasant towards the daughter. And that's the best part of it, is they get well looked after. The right energy, right thought, all that's right environment. Whereas that may not be forthcoming in, the husband's house for various reasons. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, that's one of the reasons why they sent him back, because you got to see good things, you got to hear good things, you got to feel good, you got to think good, and you got to be that in that state of feeling good so that the pregnancy fares well. So when my wife was pregnant with our first daughter, every morning before I left to work, I used to recite the Gayatri mantra, right, on her stomach, on the bump. I used to put there and I used to recite this 3 times. Then I left for work. Sometimes she asked me, why you do this every day? You could just stand there and say, I said, no, I want that energy to go into the fetus. And true enough, right, to cut a long story short, the day of the delivery, she was born a little premature. But in the hospital, they said she's not opening her eyes and she had yellow fever and all of that. But the first time I carried her, eyes was like shut. And the first thing I said to her, I recited the Gayatri mantra. When I recited the Gayatri mantra, she opened her eyes and she looked as though, I know this, right? So you see, whatever you say, that energy, that vibration is what goes inside. Good things, good vibration. Bad things, bad vibration. Very simple. So anyway, Abhimanyu was a fantastic warrior. He knew he was the only one who could break into the Chhatravyuh's formation, right? No one else. Only he knew how to get in. Because when they spoke about this in Subhadra's presence, when she was carrying Abhimanyu, they spoke about how to break it. That means getting in and breaking the formation, the war formation. But they did not speak of how to get out. So that is why he was caught. Abhimanyu was caught because he could break the formation and he was right there in the middle, but he did not know how to get out because that part of the knowledge was not taught to him and was not given to him, right? And you know how he died? Of course, all the fellows, from Duryodhana to Drona to Ashwatthama to Karna, right? When Karna was his own father's brother at the end of the day, right? But of course, he didn't know that, and Abhimanyu didn't know that. He died a horrific death, right? But the point is, he was born to Subhadra, who is Krishna's sister, who married Arjuna. Okay, now there's some story about how Arjuna got most of his celestial weapons, right? One of it was when they were in, Indraprastha. There was a big forest there. And usually they take walks into the forest. And one day they walk in the forest and someone approached and said, I'm very hungry. Can you give me some food? Or at least give me a promise that you will be giving me some food if you don't have it now. So, of course, not realizing who this figure was, Krishna and Arjuna said, yeah, sure, we will give you a word that you'll get food. And then that figure revealed itself to be Agni Deva. And Agni is, you cannot feed Agni enough. Because whatever you feed, it will consume and keep consuming until a time when it becomes satiated with its own feeling, right? So it said, because you said you're going to fill me and you can't give me anything except fire, I'm going to burn this forest. And of course, the guardian of the forest was Indra, who was Arjuna's father. So there was a big battle, and of course, they all fought together. And after, 7 to 10 days of fighting, eventually Agni Deva gave up. And as a result of gratitude, Indra gave some celestial weapons to Arjuna. Another thing is when Arjuna was once in meditation, a wild boar came running towards him. And in his, meditative vision, that's why I said to you earlier, even when your eyes closed, you can have vision, right? He could see the boar coming, and even without opening his eyes, he took the arrow and he fired. And then he opened his eyes. He realized that there was already someone who had fired the arrow to stop the boar, to stop the wild boar from getting to Arjuna. And he was looking and he finally realized that that person was Shiva, Lord Shiva, and the wild boar was Indra himself, just to test, the powers of Arjuna. And as a result of being very happy with Arjuna's sense of, action, timing of action, that is when Lord Shiva gave him the Pasupatastra and told him, we wanted to give you this, but we cannot give you something without testing you. So here's a very important lesson, right? We cannot give you, this is Lord Shiva telling Arjuna, we want to give you this, but we cannot just simply giving you this without testing you. Right? So this is how when many people, call me and say, I have not done any bad, but why am I so being tested all the time by God? All the bad fellows are happily living, and why am I being tested like this? My son's life is like this, my daughter's life is like this. I said, hang on a minute, right? So I spoke about cars metaphorically, right? I said, the price of a Ford, the price of a Fiat, the price of a Nissan, and the price of a Mercedes or a Ferrari or a Lamborghini is different. Why? Because the quality is different, right? For the quality to be vibrating at a high level, you must think how much of quality control the manufacturer has input into the product. In order to make you a fine spiritual person, do you not then think that the Lord will quality control by testing you? I asked him, how do you test helmets? The helmet is strong. When you go and buy, you say, this one good, very strong, can withstand force. Yes, but how do they know? Because they would have put it through so much of rigorous testing, and then they will sell it as a product that can withstand such force, such impact, such pressure. So you see, this, in fact, it has been said in the Vedas, it has been said in the Upanishads, it's been said in Puranas, it's been said so many places, in the Dharma Shastras, the Artha Shastras, that God will test you before he gives you something. And there you go. This is another fine example of that principle. Yeah. He gave the Pashupata Astra. He said, I can't just give it to you. Oh, Gandhi Vadari. Right? We had to test you. So Indra helped me, became the wild boar. And you're successful. So here is Pashupata Astra. And of course, it is an astra. You remember in my second week, I said to you, some weapons you can just take and use. Some weapons can only be activated by the recitation and incantation of specific activating mantras. That is the power of astras. Okay. Now, so again, in that, then they left, and then he was meditating, and there was a Apsara in that forest called Urvashi, and she was very attracted to Arjuna, and she came and expressed her love for him, and he, of course, he rejected her, and he called her Amma, his mother. Why? Because Arjuna knew through his meditation that she was once, in the ancestry of the Kuru dynasty, she was once the Rajamata. She was the wife of a king at that time. So he called her Mata. And she was very, very unhappy. And she said, you will become a eunuch, And when, the gods came and said, no, you can't curse him like that. She reduced the curse. She redacted it to 1 year. And that is why in the final year of the Vanavasa, the 13th year, when they're supposed to be incognito, as a result of the game of dice, it was decided that, they would go into forest for 12 years, but in the 13th year, they have to be incognito. That means nobody can see them and recognize them. If they did, then the 12 years repeats again. And the 13th year is incognito. So like that, in the 13th year, he was actually called Brihanala, the eunuch, right, who was in the kingdom, right, where Bhima was doing something else, Yudhishthira was doing something else. All of them were under guise, but Arjuna specifically was a eunuch. This was the in the kingdom where they subsequently, when the Kauravas were going to attack it, they then showed themselves, and that was another question whether they were seen before the 13th year came to an end. But Krishna said, no, no, no. The 13th year ended at the sunset on the last day of the 13th year, and you saw them after that. That means they cannot be sent back to prison, to Vanavasa. Right? Then, of course, the Kurukshetra war started as a result of, all the build-up, which I've spoken about many times, is purely because of Duryodhana's greed, especially when I spoke about Duryodhana, right? Why the war took place because of one man's greed. I said to you, there is enough in the entire world for everybody's need, but there is not enough in the entire universe for one man's greed. So Duryodhana wanted the kingdom at any cost. And that cost him his own life and cost him his entire family, loss of his entire family, right? Kurukshetra war. But some good things always come out of bad things. First day we had Bhagavad Gita. On the 18th day of the war, we had Vishnu Sahasranama. So the point is mind, body, intellect, right? The balance between morality and immorality. So if you have two sides of the coin, on the one side you have Duryodhana, on the other side you have Arjuna, balanced, morally bound, dharmic actions, and of course immoral, not bound by dharma, and all kinds of actions to trounce, right? So Arjuna's role in the Kurukshetra war was also, significant because he was, completely crucial in the felling of Bhishmacharya, even though he didn't want to fight. At the end of the day, Bhishma was not killed by any of the Pandava brothers, although they all fought him, right? Bhishma was killed by, I told you when I did Bhishmacharya, he was killed by Amba, who, of course, from a previous life, she came back as Shikandini, right? Who was Drupada's daughter, Drupad's sister, and Draupadi's sister. She came back and she's the one who finally put an arrow into him. He killed many of the other people who were fighting for Duryodhana. One of them was King Bhagadatha. Jayadratha, who was his brother, Duryodhana's brother-in-law, also died. Sudakshina, another king for the Cambodia. King of Cambodia at that time. Cambodia is now Cambodia. Okay, Cambodia is now Cambodia. Susharma, right, of Tigartha. One of the allies of, these are all the allies of Kaurava. On the 17th day, Arjuna killed Karna, largely because of Krishna's doing, right? And of course, he killed Karna using his Anjalikastra. So many things happened in the war. But at the end of the day, the 18th day, the war ended when Bhima successfully killed in the Battle of the Mace, Gada Yuddha. He killed Duryodhana. That came to, brought the war to an end. And then, of course, I told you the part earlier where, Dhritarashtra is visited in the palace with Krishna and the Pandava brothers going to get his, then, they took over the kingdom. The Yudhishthira starts ruling. And then they all lived there for a while before they set off to the forest. By them, I mean, Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Vidura, and Kunti, right? And then, of course, there came a time when the Pandava brothers themselves decided to go and they put Arjuna's grandson. Arjuna's grandson means Abhimanyu's son. When Abhimanyu was going to war, his wife was pregnant with Parikshit, King Parikshit. And I've spoken about Parikshit when I did Puranas. And so he was made to become the king. And the rest, as you know, is his history. But looking at some of the things that happened to Arjuna, what are the key lessons that we can learn from Arjuna? Number one is focus and dedication. See, whatever lessons I'm telling you is absolutely practical that you can inculcate in your own lives, right? So he was absolutely focused and he was dedicated to whatever he was doing, whether it was small thing, big thing, or biggest thing. He had the same focus and dedication. So that is the thing that we should inculcate in our own lives. Seeking knowledge and guidance. Always he took counsel from Krishna, the best person. So if you have a guru or if you have a teacher, if you accept them as your teacher, you see, a teacher never misleads anybody, right? Never misleads anybody. They only mislead when when there is an issue of, attachment, or when there is, there is a blockage of wisdom. Ajnana, then yes. Humility and surrender. I mean, there is some parts where Arjuna said, I am the best. And Krishna put him down, says, no, you are not the best. You were made to look as though you were the best because the other best was suppressed. And I remember telling you when we looked at Dronacharya, the best person in the entire field would have been Ekalavya, who even without the master, just focusing that was a master, he built a clay statue of Dronacharya and every day he was practicing and he would become superb. And Dronacharya realized that. He said, if I allow this fellow, he's going to beat Karna, he's going to beat Arjuna. Both are my primary, creme de la creme students. So he said, great, I'm very happy that, even without coming to my Gurukula, you can become so competent and an ace in this industry. But as a guru, since you've accepted me as a guru, where's my Guru Dakshina? And then, Ekalavya says, whatever you seek, Guru, I will give if it's within my means. Give me your right thumb. And that's it. He could never string a bow or fire an arrow again. That put Arjuna and Karna. And Karna was, reputedly a more powerful, but he, the places, the circumstances, and of course he had given a boon to his mother, saying that he will never use the Nagastra, the Pashupati Astra, anything twice, all of that. So humility and surrender is also something we can learn from Arjuna. More than, the only thing he was so proud of is, the fact that he thought he was the best in the field of archery, and he refused to accept that someone else can be better. So that is a lesson for us, right? Even though we are good, the fact that we accept and we are open to the thought that someone else can be even better than us is the learning curve, right? And of course, Arjuna was always upholding dharma. That means there was never a point where he was not upholding dharma, right? So technically, if you want to look at Arjuna and learn something, right? I think there are 5 things we can learn from Arjuna. Number 1 is self-discovery. In the 2 periods where he was in exile, there was a lot of learning, and Arjuna had learned something about his own self, his own identity, his own purpose, through various struggles and challenges. Hence the word, the test, the quality control. So the next time you think you're having a tough time, think about quality control and think about the price of that product. It's far more than the price of a product that has gone through less quality control or a lesser quality. Second of the 5, first one is, as I said to you, discovery, self-discovery, right? The first stage of self-realization is self-discovery. Then the second thing is the power of preservation, perseverance. Perseverance is something that builds your resilience. Persevere. Something hits you, you persevere. Hits you, you persevere until a time when nothing can stop you, right? And in that perseverance, the third lesson is humility. Humility. They say stoop to conquer, right? So Arjuna was one like that. Whatever Krishna said, he never questioned, he just did. And whatever his brothers older to him, right? That means Yudhishthira and Bhima, he never questioned. It's also a lesson for modern day folks, right? Modern day youth, value of humility. The fourth lesson is mentorship. Mentorship. You must accept someone who has the knowledge, the seniority, and the experience because you don't have that. When you accept that, then you should accept the fact that they know more than you and they can point you in the right direction. So the power of mentorship, and of course his mentor was Drona, Bhishma, Vidura, and of course in the 18 days Krishna, before and after. And finally, the fifth lesson is the importance of ethics, ethical behavior, ethical conduct, ethical thinking, right? So in the modern world today, if you look at the world of finance and investment, there is now something called ethical finance, ethical investment, right? It's called the green investment. So power of ethics is something great as well that we can learn from Arjuna's modus operandi and how he grew, right? Ups and downs, but he never let go of ethics. Ethics is very, very important. So his journey teaches us the power of self-discovery, perseverance, humility, mentorship, and ethics. When you have these five, I mean, this is like the 5 human values that Swami talks about, right? If you have these 5, then success is verily yours. As I said, yatho dharma, tatho Krishna, yatho Krishna, tatho jayam. Anyada sharanam nasti, tumeva sharanam mamaha, tasmat karunya bhavina, raksha raksha maheshwaraha. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you. So next week, we'll be looking at Shakuni and Yudhishthira and some closing remarks by way of consolidation. And then I'll open up to question and answers. So please do reflect. And, if you have a question that is directly related to what we've been discussing, then please do let me know or raise the questions. Then we can, look at it. Sai Ram.